A thrilling story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She dedicated 8 years of her life to him, until she was fired without warning. But before she left, he whispered, "I need you. One last time." What followed was desire, revenge, and a choice that would change everything. Watch this story until the end, you'll be surprised by it. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The air conditioning on the 32nd floor of Foster Tower hummed with the persistence of a bee trapped in a bottle. Emily Anderson adjusted her glasses on her nose and breathed deeply, trying to ignore the heat spreading through the executive office on that stuffy March afternoon. Outside, Los Angeles was boiling under a merciless sun that transformed the asphalt into illusory puddles of water. It was almost 6 in the evening when she knocked on the half-open door of Michael Foster's office. There was no response, but she could hear the familiar sound of papers being flipped through with the mechanical precision she knew so well. Emily pushed the door slowly, balancing in her hands the folder with the quarterly reports that had just arrived from the San Francisco branch. Michael had his back to her, looking through the panoramic window that overlooked Santa Monica Bay. Even without seeing his face, Emily knew exactly what his expression was at that moment. The tense line of his shoulders under the impeccable navy blue suit, the way his fingers drummed against his right thigh when he was thinking, the almost imperceptible way he tilted his head when something bothered him. After 8 years working alongside Michael Foster, Emily could read each of his gestures as if they were words written in invisible ink. "The San Francisco numbers arrived," she said, approaching the massive mahogany desk that occupied almost half of the room. "Marcus said you needed to review them before tomorrow's meeting." Michael turned slowly, and Emily felt that familiar tightness in her chest that accompanied her whenever she saw him after a few hours of absence. It was ridiculous, she knew. At 32, Emily Anderson was an intelligent woman, with a degree in business administration from UCLA, specialized in business management, with a resume that would make any company fight over her. She wasn't the type of woman who melted because of a look. But Michael Foster wasn't just any man. He was 41, with dark hair and grey strands that were beginning to appear at his temples, and eyes of a greyish green that changed shade, depending on the light. At that moment, under the orange clarity of late afternoon coming through the window, his eyes looked almost golden. There was something different in them today, a restlessness that she couldn't decipher. "Emily," he said, and the way he pronounced her name sent a shiver down her spine. "Thanks for the reports. You can leave them there." She placed the folder on the desk, but didn't move to leave. There was something in the air of that room, an electrical tension that seemed to vibrate between them, like a stretched cord about to break. It was always like this when they were alone, as if the whole world disappeared, and only the two of them remained, breathing the same air charged with unexplored possibilities. "Mr. Foster," she began, using the formal treatment she maintained between them during working hours, "is everything okay? You seem what?" Michael approached the desk, standing just a few inches from her. Emily could smell his cologne, a subtle mix of sandalwood and something indefinable that was purely Michael. She could see the small wrinkles that formed at the corners of his eyes when he smiled, which he wasn't doing now. "Worried," she finished, struggling to keep her voice firm. "More than usual." Michael laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "The normal for a man like me is to always be worried, Emily. You should know that by now." He was right. In the 8 years she had worked as his executive assistant, Emily had seen Michael face crises that would make other businessmen abandon everything and flee to a distant beach. Strikes, tax investigations, stock market crashes, political pressures. Michael Foster always maintained the same serene expression, the same controlled voice, the same polite smile he used in meetings with Japanese investors or charity dinners. But Emily knew the man behind the mask. She knew when he hadn't slept well because he kept fidgeting with the Mont Blanc pen he had received from his father on graduation day. She knew when he was nervous because the smile didn't reach his eyes. She knew when he was furious because His voice became even calmer and more polite than usual, and she knew when he was looking at her, as if she were the only person in the world who could understand him. Like now. Emily, Michael said again, and this time there was something different in his tone, something dangerous. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if... He stopped mid-sentence, shaking his head as if waking from a dream. Emily felt her heart race. If what? Nothing. Forget. It... Michael moved away from her, going back behind the desk. It's late, you should go home. But Emily didn't move. She couldn't. There was something happening there, something they had been dancing around for years without ever having the courage to face. She thought of her mother, Rose Anderson, who spent 23 years of her life waiting for a married man to decide to choose her. She thought of the nights when Rose cried quietly in her room, believing her daughter couldn't hear. She thought of the promise she made to herself at 16, never ever would she be the other woman. But then Michael raised his eyes to her, and Emily saw something breaking behind that greyish green. It wasn't desire she had seen for years, in the times when he thought she wasn't looking. It was something bigger, something that made her feel as if she were on the edge of a precipice. Michael, she whispered, forgetting for a moment. Where they were, forgetting the rules they had created for themselves to survive that impossible proximity. He closed his eyes, as if hearing his name on her lips was physically painful. You can't call me that, he said. Not here, not what? Emily approached the desk, placing her palms on the cold mahogany. Not when I'm being your employee? Not when I pretend I don't see how you look at me? Not when I pretend I don't feel what happens between us every time we're alone? Michael suddenly opened his eyes, and what Emily saw there made her take a step back. It was hunger, pure and simple, the same hunger she had felt gnawing inside for so long that it had become part of her. Emily, he said, and his voice was hoarse, you don't know what you're saying. Yes, I do. She raised her chin, defiant. I know exactly what I'm saying, and I know that you know too. For a moment, they stood there looking at each other in silence, breathing heavily, like two fighters who just discovered they were in the same ring. The air conditioning continued to hum, but the heat between them was suffocating. Then the phone rang. The shrill sound cut through the air like a blade, and both of them jumped. Michael answered on the second ring, and Emily saw his expression change completely when he heard the voice on the other end of the line. Jessica, he said, and his wife's name fell between them like a stone thrown into a lake. Emily felt the blood cool in her veins. For a moment, for a crazy, impossible moment, she had completely forgotten about Jessica Collins Foster, the elegant and cold woman who appeared beside Michael on the covers of social magazines, Senator Collins's daughter, who had impeccable blonde hair and calculated smiles, the wife whom, in 10 years of marriage, Emily had seen in person only 3 times. Yes, I know it's important, Michael was saying on the phone, but his eyes didn't leave Emily's face. Yes, I'll be there. Emily moved away from the desk slowly, feeling as if she were waking from a bad dream. What had just happened? What was she doing? She had spent 8 years building a solid career, an impeccable reputation, a dignified life, and she was about to throw it all away because of a man who belonged to another woman. Emily, wait, Michael said, covering the mouthpiece of the phone with his hand. But she was already heading for the door. Good night, Mr. Foster, she said without turning around. See you tomorrow. She left the office before he could respond, but as she waited for the elevator, she could feel the weight of his gaze on her back through the glass wall. When the doors opened, Emily quickly entered and pressed the ground floor button with more force than necessary. It was only when she was on the subway on her way home that she realized she was trembling. Emily's apartment was in Malibu, in a middle-class building constructed in the 80s. It was small, 1 bedroom, a living room combined with the kitchen, 1 bathroom, but it was hers. She had bought it with her own money after 5 years of saving every cent of her salary. The view from the window didn't show the ocean. just the internal courtyard of the building and the wall of the neighboring building, but Emily didn't mind. It was better than the house in Pasadena where she grew up, where the neighbors knew that Rose Anderson was the mistress of a married man and whispered about it every time she passed by. Emily took a long shower, trying to wash away the feeling that she had crossed a line from which there would be no return. But even under the hot water, she could still smell Michael's cologne stuck to her skin. She could still remember the way he had said her name, as if it were a prayer. She wrapped herself in a towel and went to the kitchen to prepare some tea. It was a ritual that had calmed her since adolescence. While waiting for the water to boil, she picked up the cell phone she had left on the counter and saw that she had 3 missed messages. 2 were from Carly, her best friend since college, asking if she wanted to go out for dinner. The 3rd was from a number she immediately recognized, although she had never saved it in her contacts. Michael. Emily stared at the screen for a long moment before opening the message. "We need to talk." Just 4 words, but they seemed to carry the weight of the world. Emily typed and deleted a response at least 10 times before giving up and putting the cell phone back on the counter. The kettle whistled, and she prepared her chamomile tea with mechanical gestures. It was only when she was sitting on the sofa with the hot cup between her hands that she allowed herself to think about what had really happened that afternoon. It hadn't just been a moment of weakness. It hadn't just been accumulated tension or work stress. It had been the first time in 8 years that they had come close to admitting what they felt for each other. And Emily didn't know whether she was relieved or terrified. She knew Michael better than she knew herself. She knew that he had married Jessica not for love, but out of necessity. The marriage had saved Foster Holdings from a devastating financial crisis, creating political alliances that kept the company competitive in the international market. Michael had never spoken about it directly, but Emily had worked behind the scenes of the deal. She had seen the contracts, the negotiations, the forced smiles in the wedding photos that graced the social pages for weeks. But knowing the marriage was an arrangement didn't make the situation any less complicated. Michael was still a married man, and Emily was still the daughter of a woman who had destroyed her own life, waiting for a married man to choose her. The phone rang again. This time it was the landline. Emily looked at the device on the coffee table as if it were a venomous snake. Nobody called the landline. It was cheaper to use the cell phone, and all her acquaintances knew that. The only person who had the landline number and might be calling at that hour was, "Hello, Emily." Michael's voice sounded even hoarser over the phone. "You didn't answer my message." I didn't know what to answer. "We can start with the truth." Emily closed her eyes. "The truth about what?" "You know about what?" There was a loaded silence on the other end of the line. Emily could hear Michael's breathing, could imagine him sitting in the empty office with his tie loosened and his hair disheveled, could imagine him running his hand over his face, the way he did when he was tired. "Michael," she said finally, "this is madness. I know. You're married. I know. I work for you. I know. So why are we having this conversation?" Another silence, longer this time. "Because," Michael said at last, "I can't pretend any more that I don't feel what I feel for you. And because today when you called me by my name, I realized that you can't pretend any more either." Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. It was everything she had wanted to hear for 8 years, and everything she most feared hearing. "This can't happen," she whispered. "I know," Michael repeated, "but it's already happening, isn't it? It's been happening for years." He was right. Emily knew that in her heart, even if her mind refused to accept it. What they felt for each other hadn't started that afternoon. It had started years ago, growing slowly like a plant in fertile soil, in the looks that lasted longer than they should, in the conversations that extended late into business trips, in the way Michael asked about her personal life as if he really cared, in the way she could make him laugh when no one else could. "Emily," Michael said, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that she had never heard before. I can't promise anything. I can't promise that it will be easy or that it will work out or that we won't get hurt, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real." Emily squeezed her eyes shut, trying to contain the tears. "My mother spent her entire life loving a man who could never be entirely hers," she said. "I promised that I would never be like her." "You're not your mother, and I'm not him." "How can you be sure?" "Because," Michael said, and his voice became so low that Emily had to strain to hear, "I've been in love with you for so long that I don't even remember what it's like not to be." The words fell on Emily like rain on dry land. She knew she should hang up the phone. She knew she should get up, go to the bedroom, forget that conversation, and tomorrow return to work as if nothing had happened. She knew that's what a sensible woman would do. Instead, she said, "Me too." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. It was a silence loaded with promises and possibilities, with danger and desire. "Emily," Michael said finally, "I want to see you, not at the office, not as boss and employee. I want to see you as Michael and Emily." "When?" "Now." Emily looked at the clock on the wall. It was almost 10 at night. "Michael, it's late. And what if someone sees us? What if they don't? What if it's just one night for us to be honest with each other?" Emily closed her eyes again, feeling as if she were at the edge of an abyss. She knew that if she said yes, there would be no going back. She knew she was about to become exactly the type of woman she had always judged. But she also knew that Michael was right. They had already crossed the line. Maybe not physically, but emotionally they had been on the other side for a long time. "Where?" she asked before she could change her mind. "Do you know the bar at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel?" Emily knew it. It was elegant, discreet, and just a 10-minute drive from her apartment. "In half an hour," Michael said. "Michael." "Yes? If we do this, there's no going back." "I know," he said softly. "Do you still want to come?" Emily looked around her small, safe apartment, looked at the carefully constructed life she was about to shake up, thought of Rose, of the promise she had made, of the risks she was taking. Then she thought of Michael saying he had been in love with her for so long that he didn't even remember what it was like not to be. "Yes," she said. "I'll come." After she hung up the phone, Emily sat on the sofa for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Then she got up, went to the bedroom and opened the wardrobe. If she was going to do this, she would at least do it right. She chose a simple but elegant navy blue dress that she had bought for a graduation and never worn. She put on low-heeled shoes, high enough to be elegant, low enough to be able to walk. She applied discreet lipstick and perfume on her wrists. Before leaving, she stopped in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at herself for a long moment. The woman looking back seemed different, braver, more dangerous, more alive. The taxi to Beverly Hills took 15 minutes in the night traffic. Emily spent every second of that time wondering if she was doing the right thing. When she arrived at the hotel, she saw Michael waiting at the entrance to the bar. He had exchanged the formal suit for dark dress pants and a white shirt without tie. He looked younger like this, more human. When he saw her, something changed in his face. His eyes lit up in a way that Emily had never seen, not even in the best moments at the office. "You came," he said when she approached. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought you might be more sensible than I am." Emily smiled for the first time that night. "I think neither of us is being very sensible tonight." Michael offered her his arm and she accepted. The simple touch of his hand on her elbow sent waves of electricity through her body. If it was like this with just a casual touch, how would it be when... Emily cut off the thought before she could finish it. One thing at a time. The bar at the Beverly Wilshire was exactly as she remembered. Low lighting, soft music, intimate tables scattered around an elegant but welcoming environment. Michael chose a table in the corner, away from other people, where they could talk without being overheard. "What would you like to drink?" he asked when the waiter approached. "Red wine," Emily said. She needed something strong to maintain her courage. Michael ordered a bottle of Bordeaux, and they remained silent until the waiter returned with the glasses. When they were finally alone, Michael raised his glass. "A toast," he said. "To what?" "To honesty." Emily touched her glass to his, and the crystalline sound echoed between them like a promise. "So," she said after taking the first sip, "let's be honest. Completely. How long have you known?" Michael smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes. "That I'm in love with you? Since your second year working for me. Do you remember that trip to Washington? When we got stuck at the airport because of the storm?" Emily remembered. They had spent the whole night talking in the VIP lounge about everything and nothing, about her dreams of having her own company one day, about the pressure he felt to maintain the family legacy, about books, movies, places they would like to visit. It had been the first time Michael had spoken to her as an equal, not as an employee. "You were wearing that grey blazer," Michael continued, "and had tied your hair in a messy bun. And suddenly you laughed at something I said, and I thought, that's it, it's over." "What's over?" "My peace of mind." Emily felt her heart race. "And you?" Michael asked. "When did you know?" Emily thought for a moment, swirling the wine in her glass. "Remember when you had that pneumonia last year, and you were hospitalized for 3 days?" Michael nodded. "I volunteered to stay with you at the hospital. I said it was to keep the business in order. But the truth is I couldn't bear the thought of you being alone there." Emily took another sip of wine before continuing. "On the second night, you were sleeping, and I was looking at you. You seemed so vulnerable, so human. And I realized I would give anything to protect you, that I would do anything for you. That's when I knew I was lost." Michael reached across the table and touched her hand. The contact sent an electric shock up her arm. "We're not lost," he said softly. "We're found." Emily turned her hand up, intertwining her fingers with his. It was the first time they had touched this way, deliberately, intimately. It was different from the accidental touches at the office. It was a declaration. "Michael," she said, "what about Jessica?" His face darkened for a moment. "Jessica and I have an arrangement. We always have. She has her life, I have mine. We appear together when necessary, keep up appearances, fulfill our roles, but we haven't been real husband and wife for years." "But you're still married." "Legally, yes. But marriage is more than a piece of paper, Emily. It's loving someone. Enough to put them before everything else. It's wanting to wake up beside that person every day for the rest of your life. He squeezed her hand. "It's what I feel for you." Emily felt tears stinging her eyes again. "And if someone finds out? And if it harms your company, your reputation?" "Then let it harm," Michael said, and there was a firmness in his voice that she had never heard. "I've spent 41 years of my life doing what was expected of me. I married who I was expected to marry. I run the company as I was expected to run it. I smile and shake hands and make speeches when I'm expected to. But for the first time in my life, Emily, I want to do something just because I want to. Just because it makes me happy. And I make you happy." Michael brought her hand to his lips and softly kissed her fingers. "You make me feel alive." They stayed at the bar until almost midnight, talking, drinking wine, discovering aspects of each other that had remained hidden during all those years of forced professionalism. Emily discovered that Michael wrote poems when he was stressed, that he had a scar on his knee from when he fell off his bicycle at age 7, that his greatest fear was disappointing his father, even though the man had been dead for 5 years. Michael discovered that Emily had a small anchor tattooed on her right ankle, that she took ballroom dancing classes on Wednesdays, that she dreamed of visiting Alaska, that she chose to work for him not just for the salary, but because she admired the way he treated employees. It was almost as if they were getting to know each other for the first time, although at the same time it seemed like they had known each other for a lifetime. When they left the hotel, Michael insisted on taking her home. "You don't have to," Emily said. "I can get a taxi." "I want to," he replied simply. His car was a discreet black BMW, nothing too flashy by the standards of a businessman of his level. During the short journey to her apartment, they remained silent, but it was a comfortable silence, loaded with expectation. When they stopped in front of her building, neither of them moved to get out of the car. "Emily," Michael said finally. "Yes." "I don't regret tonight." "Neither do I." He turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the car she could see the desire in his eyes. It was the same desire she felt burning inside herself. "May I kiss you?" he asked. In response, Emily leaned closer to him. The kiss was soft at first, almost hesitant, as if both were afraid of breaking the spell. But then Emily sighed against his lips and something released between them. Michael deepened the kiss, one hand going to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair. Emily felt as if she were drowning and being saved at the same time. For they separated. Both were breathing heavily. "My God," Michael whispered, leaning his forehead against hers. "I know. How much time we've wasted." "It doesn't matter," Emily said, running her finger along the line of his jaw. "What matters is what we do from now on." Michael captured her hand and kissed her palm. "Tomorrow," he said, "everything will be different." "I know." "Are you sure this is what you want?" Emily looked into his green eyes, at the face she knew so well, but that now seemed completely new. She thought about the safe life she was leaving behind, the promises she was breaking, the risks she was taking. Then she thought about how she felt when he kissed her, as if she had finally come home. "I'm sure," she said. Michael smiled, and it was the most genuine smile she had ever seen on his face. "Then good night, Emily Anderson." "Good night, Michael Foster." She got out of the car and walked to the entrance of the building without looking back, but she could feel his eyes following every step. Only when she was safely in her apartment, with the door locked behind her, did she allow herself to smile. Tomorrow, everything would be different. And for the first time in a long time, Emily wasn't afraid of the future. She was looking forward to it. The next morning, Emily arrived at the office 20 minutes earlier than usual. She had slept only 3 hours, but felt more awake than ever. The mirror in the company bathroom reflected a different woman. Her eyes shone with a new intensity. Her lips still seemed swollen from the previous night's kisses. She applied lipstick, with extra care, trying to disguise the physical traces of that turnaround in her life. The 32nd floor was still empty when she left the elevator. The offices of Foster Holdings would only begin to pulse with life in an hour, when the first employees arrived with their coffees and their predictable routines. Emily took advantage of the tranquility to organize Michael's schedule, review the contracts that needed signatures, and mentally prepare for what would be the first day of work after they had crossed the line that separated them from the inevitable. When she heard the familiar footsteps in the corridor, at 8 o'clock sharp as always, her heart raced. Michael appeared at the door of the anteroom. Impeccable grey suit, hair combed with the rigor of always, but there was something different in his eyes, a light that Emily couldn't completely decipher. "Good morning, Emily," he said, and the way he pronounced her name carried all the weight of the intimacy they had shared. "Good morning, Mr. Foster," she replied, trying to maintain the professionalism that would still be necessary there. Michael stopped in front of her desk, and for a moment they looked at each other in silence. Emily could feel the electricity vibrating between them, the same tension that had always existed, but now amplified by everything they had confessed the night before. "We need to talk," he said quietly, checking if there was no one nearby. "About how we're going to handle this here." "Yes," Emily agreed, "we need rules. My office in 5 minutes." Michael entered his office, and Emily waited the agreed time before following him, carrying a random folder to justify the meeting in case someone asked. When she closed the door behind her, Michael was leaning on the desk, arms crossed, serious expression. "I can't pretend that nothing has changed," he said, getting straight to the point, "but I also can't put your career at risk, or the company." Emily approached, stopping at a safe distance from him. "I know. I thought about that all night too." "And what was your conclusion?" "That we are adults." That we know how to separate personal life from professional, and that, she hesitated for a moment, it's worth taking the risk. Michael uncrossed his arms and took a step toward her. Emily, if someone finds out, no one will find out if we're careful. And if we can't be careful, and if one day I can't control myself and kiss you right here in front of everyone. The question made Emily's blood heat up. The idea of Michael losing control because of her was both terrifying and exciting. Then we'll have to make sure that it doesn't happen, she said, but her voice came out hoarser than she intended. Michael smiled, and Emily noticed that he had moved even closer. Now he was close enough for her to smell his cologne, to see the small wrinkles around his eyes that appeared when he smiled genuinely. "It's going to be harder than you imagine," he murmured. "Why?" In response, Michael extended his hand and lightly touched her face, his thumb tracing a soft line across her cheek. The touch was light, almost imperceptible, but it made Emily close her eyes involuntarily. "Because of this," he said. "Because now that I know what it's like to touch you, I don't know if I'll be able to stop." Emily opened her eyes and saw pure desire in his gaze, the same desire she felt burning inside herself. "Then let's establish boundaries," she said, trying to be the voice of reason, even when every fiber of her body screamed for her to throw herself into his arms. "During working hours, we are boss and employee, nothing more. And after working hours. After working hours, we are Michael and Emily." He nodded slowly but didn't remove his hand from her face. "One more rule," he said. "Which one?" "If at any moment you feel uncomfortable, if you think this is harming your work or your life, you tell me, immediately. And you will do the same, I promise." They stayed that way for a few more seconds until they heard voices in the corridor. Michael quickly moved away, going behind the desk, and Emily fixed her hair before opening the folder she had brought. "The contracts from the San Diego branch arrived yesterday," she said out loud, resuming the professional tone. "You need to review them before the 10 o'clock meeting." "Thank you, Emily. You can leave them on the desk." The door opened and Marcus, the financial director, entered with a stack of reports. "Good morning, folks. Michael, we need to talk about the quarterly numbers." Emily took the opportunity to leave, but when she passed by Michael, he murmured so quietly that only she could hear, "Dinner today, 8 o'clock. I'll send you the address." She nodded almost imperceptibly and left the room, her heart still racing. The weeks that followed were the most intense of Emily's life. During the day, they maintained the professional facade with a skill that surprised them both. Michael continued to be the demanding and controlled boss as always, and Emily continued to be the efficient and discreet assistant, but there was an undercurrent of sexual energy between them that made each interaction loaded with meaning. A simple, "Do you need anything else, Mr. Foster?" at the end of the day carried all the weight of accumulated desire. A "Thank you, Emily," when she delivered documents sounded like a caress. When their hands accidentally touched in the exchange of papers, both felt electric shocks that lasted for hours. After hours, however, they were free to be themselves. Michael took her to dinners at discreet restaurants, away from the social circles where they might be recognized. They discovered they had more in common than they thought. Both loved old movies and spent an entire night debating whether Casablanca was really superior to Citizen Kane. Emily discovered that Michael had a beautiful voice and liked to sing in the shower. Michael discovered that Emily wrote short stories in her spare time and had real talent for narrative. But what surprised them most was how they talked, hours and hours without stopping, about everything and nothing, about the dreams they had abandoned, the fears that haunted them, the hopes they still nurtured. It was as if they had 8 years of accumulated conversation and could finally pour it all out. And of course there were the kisses. Stolen kisses in the building's parking lot when they were sure no one was around. Long and desperate kisses in his car parked on dark streets. Soft and tender kisses when he dropped her off at home, which made her float to the apartment as if she were walking on clouds. But as much as desire grew between them, as much as some nights Emily fell asleep, imagining what it would be like to have Michael in her bed, both maintained an unverbalized limit. "Not yet. It was too new, too fragile, too risky. Until 6 weeks after that first night at the bar, everything changed. Emily was organizing the board's files when she found a folder she didn't recognize. It was inside a locked drawer of Michael's desk. He had asked her to look for a specific contract and given her the key. The folder was simple, plain manila, but it was marked with a code that wasn't part of the company's filing system. Curious, she opened it. What she saw made her sit heavily in the chair. They were bank statements, dozens of them, from accounts at different banks, some in the United States, others abroad, all in the names of companies that Emily didn't know, but which apparently were subsidiaries of Foster Holdings. The amounts were astronomical, transfers of millions of dollars, deposits with no clear origin, movements that made no sense at all from the point of view of the company's legitimate business. But what really shocked her was seeing the name of Jessica Collins Foster as a signatory on several of the accounts. Emily flipped through the documents with trembling hands. There were handwritten notes in the margins in Michael's handwriting, questioning the operations, circled dates, underlined numbers. It was obvious that he was investigating something. "Emily?" Michael's voice behind her made her jump. "Did you find the contract?" She turned slowly, still holding the folder. Michael looked at the documents in her hands, and his expression changed completely. "Michael," she said slowly, "what is this?" He closed the door of the room and approached, extending his hand to take the folder. Emily handed it over without resistance. "How much did you see?" he asked, storing the documents in a different drawer, which he locked with a key he took from his pocket. "Enough, Michael. Are those Jessica's accounts? What is she doing?" Michael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that Emily had learned to recognize as a sign of extreme stress. "Money laundering," he said simply. "Using phantom subsidiaries of the company to move dirty money, probably linked to her father's schemes." Emily felt her blood run cold. "How long have you known?" "I started to suspect 3 months ago, confirmed last week." "And what are you going to do?" Michael sat heavily in the chair, suddenly looking much older than his 41 years. "I don't know," he said, and there was a vulnerability in his voice that broke Emily's heart. "If I report it, it doesn't just bring down Jessica. It brings down her father, brings down the company, brings down everything. Hundreds of employees are left without jobs. Clients are harmed. The brand my father built becomes synonymous with corruption." Emily approached and knelt beside his chair, placing her hand on his arm. "But if you don't report it, you're complicit in crime." "I know." Michael looked at her with eyes full of agony. "That's what's killing me, Emily. Whatever choice I make, someone gets hurt. And does Jessica know you've discovered it?" "Not yet. I've been careful. But it won't be long before she realizes I'm investigating." Emily was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then she asked the only thing that really mattered. "What is your heart telling you to do?" Michael looked at her for a long moment. "My heart is telling me to take your hand, leave here, and never look back. But my conscience—" "What is your conscience telling you?" "To do the right thing, even if it destroys me in the process." Emily squeezed his arm. "Then that's what you're going to do." "Are you sure?" "I am." "Because," she hesitated, then decided to be completely honest, "because I fell in love with the principled man that you are. And I don't want you to change that because of me." Michael held her face between his hands. "How did I deserve you?" "Maybe you don't deserve me," Emily said with a sad smile. "Maybe it's just luck." They kissed right there, in his office, in the middle of the afternoon, with employees passing by the corridor. It was a kiss loaded with desperation and decision, as if both knew that something was about to change irreversibly. When they separated, Michael leaned his forehead against hers. "Emily," he said, "I need you to know that, regardless of what happens from here on out, these last 2 months have been the best of my life. Why are you talking as if this were a goodbye? Because it might be." During the following days, Michael became increasingly tense. Emily saw him working late, making confidential calls, gathering documents. She tried to help when she could, but felt that he was pulling away, preparing for something he didn't want to share with her. The answer came on a rainy Thursday in May. Emily arrived at the office and found a brown envelope on her desk. Inside, a termination letter. Not just any letter. A dismissal with all benefits paid, impeccable references, and a generous severance package enough for her to go months without worrying about money. But what left her breathless was seeing Michael's signature at the end of the document. She flew to his office, still holding the letter. Michael was standing, looking out the panoramic window, his hands behind his back. "Explain," she said, closing the door behind her. He turned slowly. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "It was the only way to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From what's going to happen when I hand these documents to the FBI. Emily, when this explodes, all employees close to management will be investigated. You've worked with me for 8 years. You know all the systems, have access to all the information. They'll think you were involved." Emily shook her head. "That's ridiculous. I didn't know anything until last week." "But how will you prove it?" "Emily, you don't understand. This is going to be a national scandal. They'll look for culprits everywhere, and I can't let you be dragged down with me." "So you decided for me." "I decided to protect you." Emily threw the letter on his desk. "This isn't protection, Michael. This is abandonment." The word fell between them like a bomb. Michael recoiled as if he had been slapped. "Emily." "No, you don't have the right to make that decision for me. Not after everything we've lived through together." "It's precisely because of what we've lived through together that I'm doing this," Michael exploded, losing his composure for the first time since she had known him. "You think it's not killing me to have to push you away. You think I want to be away from you. Then, why are you doing this?" "Because I love you." The words came out of him like a cry of pain. "Because I love you more than I love myself, more than I love this company, more than I love my own life. And I can't let you pay the price for my mistakes." Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. "Your mistakes? Michael, you haven't done anything wrong." "Yes, I have. I married a woman I didn't love for money. I pretended for 10 years that I had a life that wasn't mine. I let this company become a facade for criminals. And worst of all," his voice broke, "I fell in love with the most wonderful woman in the world and can't even protect her properly." Emily approached him, ignoring the tears that ran down her face. "Michael, listen to what I'm saying. I don't want your protection. I want to be by your side, face this together. I can't let you." "Why not?" "Because if something happens to you because of me, I won't be able to live with myself." Emily held his face between her hands, forcing him to look into her eyes. "And you think I'll be able to live knowing that you're facing this alone? That I abandoned you when you needed me most?" Michael closed his eyes, as if her words were physically painful. "Emily, please, don't make this more difficult than it already is." "I'm not leaving," she said firmly. "You can fire me, you can tear up my contract, you can do whatever you want, but I'm not abandoning you." Michael opened his eyes, and she saw something breaking. Inside them, "If you stay, you could go to prison. If I go to prison, at least it will be fighting for something I believe in." "And what do you believe in?" "In you. In us. In the truth." Michael pulled her into his arms, hugging her with a force that almost hurt her. Emily could feel his body trembling. "I don't deserve you," he whispered in her ear. "Stop saying that. The only thing you don't deserve is to carry this weight alone." They stayed embraced for a long time, in the middle of his office, not caring if anyone could see them through the glass wall. At that moment, the world had reduced to the two of them. When they finally separated, Michael held her hands. "If you really want to help me," he said, "you'll have to trust me completely. And it's going to be dangerous. I already trust you, and I don't care about the danger." Michael nodded slowly, as if he were making a decision that would have no return. "We have to leave Los Angeles. There's a place in the mountains, an old family property. We'll need a few days to organize all the documents before delivering them to the FBI." "When?" "Tonight." Emily felt a shiver of fear and excitement. "And if someone looks for us?" "I'll say you quit and went traveling, that I'm going to spend the weekend at the Lake Tahoe house to relax before the storm." "And if Jessica suspects?" Michael hesitated. "Jessica is in Miami. At least that's what she told me. But Emily, he squeezed her hands, from the moment we leave Los Angeles, there's no going back. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Emily thought about everything she was leaving behind. The safe and predictable life, the small but her own apartment, the career she had built brick by brick, the promise she made to her mother to never get involved with a married man. Then she looked at Michael and saw not the powerful businessman, but the man who had the courage to destroy everything he had built in the name of the truth, the man who loved her enough to try to protect her, even if it destroyed him, the man who was willing to face the storm, even knowing he might not survive it. I'm sure, she said. Michael smiled for the first time that day. Then let's go. That night, Emily packed 2 suitcases with the essentials and waited for Michael to come pick her up. When she went down, he was in the car, engine running, constantly looking in the rearview mirrors. He looked like a man on the run, which, in a way, was exactly what was happening. "Ready?" he asked when she got in the car. "Ready." Michael drove through the streets of Los Angeles as if he knew every curve by memory. Maybe he did. He had grown up in that city, built everything there that he was now about to destroy. Emily looked out the window, watching the city lights pass like golden blurs, and wondered when, if ever, she would see that view again. The road to Lake Tahoe was dark and almost empty at that time of night. Michael drove in silence, focused, constantly checking if they weren't being followed. Emily tried to relax, but the tension in the air was palpable. "Michael," she said when they were going up the mountain. "Yes. What are we going to find there?" "Documents that my father hid before he died. Evidence that he knew what was happening and tried to stop it. And," he hesitated, "maybe evidence that shows that the situation is even worse than we imagine." Emily felt a chill. "Worse how?" "It's not just a few phantom companies, Emily. It's a scheme that involves politicians, businessmen, bankers, Foster. Holdings might have been used as a base for a corruption network that goes far beyond what we can imagine. And now that we know this, what do we do?" Michael looked at her quickly before turning his attention back to the road. "We do the only thing we can do. We tell the truth, and we deal with the consequences." The Foster family property was at the top of a mountain, hidden by a dirt trail. That left the main road. It was a large and old house built in the 50s, when Michael's grandfather had decided that the family needed a refuge away from the heat of Los Angeles. Michael hadn't been there for more than 2 years, but the house was maintained by a caretaker who lived in a small house at the back of the property. When they arrived, everything was dark and silent. Michael took the keys hidden under a vase on the porch and opened the main door. The smell of a closed house invaded Emily's nostrils when they entered. "Electricity still works," Michael said, turning on the lights. "John must have kept everything functioning." The house was beautiful, in a rustic and welcoming way that Emily didn't expect. Solid wooden furniture, stone fireplaces, Persian rugs faded by time. There were family photos on the walls. Michael as a child, smiling next to a grey-haired man who could only be his father. "He was handsome," Emily said, stopping in front of a photo where Michael, about 16 years old, was next to his father. "On a fishing trip. He was a good man," Michael replied, putting the suitcases on the floor. "Better than me." "Don't say that. It's true, he would never have let things get to this point." Emily turned to look at him. "Michael, you're not responsible for Jessica's choices. But I am responsible for having closed my eyes for so long. For having been a coward. You weren't a coward, you were prudent, and now you're doing the right thing." Michael approached her, putting his arms around her waist. "You know something strange?" he said. "What?" "Despite all this chaos, despite the fear and uncertainty, being here with you makes me feel at peace." Emily smiled, resting her head on his chest. "I feel at peace too, as if we were finally where we should be." "Even if it's in the middle of a storm?" "Especially because it's in the middle of a storm. Because it means we're facing it together." Michael kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Emily Anderson." "I love you too, Michael Foster." They stayed there embraced for a few minutes in the middle of that old room, surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the uncertainties of the future. But for the first time since everything began, Emily felt exactly where she should be. No matter what came next, they would face it together, and maybe, just maybe, they would survive the storm they themselves had unleashed. The first ray of sun of the morning entered through the window of the main bedroom of the house in Lake Tahoe, waking Emily from a deep sleep that she hadn't experienced in weeks. For a moment, she was disoriented, not recognizing the rustic wooden ceiling above her, until reality returned like a wave. She was in the Foster family house, hidden in the mountains, with Michael sleeping in the room next door. They had stayed up until almost 3 in the morning, exploring the house, talking about what they would do in the coming days, trying to maintain the courage that had brought them there. Michael had insisted that she stay in the main bedroom, while he would sleep in the room he occupied as a child. It wouldn't be appropriate, he had said, with that shy smile she was learning to love. As if appropriate was still a word that applied to the situation they were in. Emily got up slowly, wearing the simple nightgown she had brought in her suitcase. Through the window, she could see the typical foggy morning of the mountains, with a light mist covering the mountains around. The silence was almost absolute, broken only by the distant song of some birds and the soft noise of the wind in the trees. She went to the kitchen and found Michael already awake, standing in front of the stove, preparing coffee. He was wearing only jeans and a simple white t-shirt, his hair disheveled from sleep. It was the first time Emily had seen him like this, so casual, so human. At the office, Michael was always impeccable, controlled, a polished version of himself. There in the kitchen of the house where he grew up, he finally seemed relaxed. "Good morning," she said softly, not wanting to break the peace of that moment. Michael turned and smiled when he saw her. His eyes quickly traveled over her nightgown, and Emily saw something darken in his gaze before he turned his face away. "Good morning, I hope you slept well." "Better than I expected." Emily approached, smelling the freshly made coffee. "How long have you been awake?" "An hour, maybe." "Couldn't sleep much. Keeps thinking in the head, you know." Emily nodded. She, too, had spent a good part of the night awake, not only thinking about the documents they needed to find, but about the strange intimacy of being in that house with Michael. It was as if they were a real couple, waking up together, sharing breakfast, a fantasy that she had never fully allowed herself to have. "I thought after coffee we could look for my father's office," Michael said, serving the coffee in 2 old porcelain cups. "If he really hid documents, here, that's where they'll be." "Do you have any idea where he might have kept them?" Michael hesitated, stirring the sugar in his coffee with thoughtful movements. "My father was a meticulous man, paranoid even. After my mother died, he became even more cautious, more suspicious. If he suspected something was wrong in the company, he would have created some kind of insurance." Emily took a sip of the coffee, which was strong and aromatic. "Insurance? Evidence, documents that could protect the family name if things went wrong." Michael looked out the window, lost in memories. He always said that an intelligent businessman had to think 3 moves ahead of the enemies. "And do you think Jessica was seen as an enemy by him?" "My father never liked her, said she was too ambitious, too cold, but I thought it was just class prejudice, you know. Jessica came from a political family, and my father always despised politicians." Michael paused. "Now I realize that maybe he knew something that I was too young to understand." They finished their coffee in a comfortable silence, and then Michael guided her through the house to a corridor she hadn't seen the night before. At the end, there was a heavy oak door with an old key in the lock. "His office," Michael said, turning the key. "No one has entered here since he died." The room that was revealed when the door opened was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a mahogany desk even larger than Michael's at the Los Angeles office, and paintings of American landscapes on the walls. But what most caught Emily's attention was how everything was exactly as if the owner had just stepped out for a coffee and would return at any moment. "My God," she whispered, "it's like a museum." Michael entered slowly, almost reverently. Emily could see the emotion on his face as he touched the leather chair behind the desk. He spent hours here, reading, working, thinking, When I was a child, sometimes he would let me sit on the floor while he dealt with paperwork. Michael smiled sadly. I thought it was the greatest thing. I thought that one day I would be like him, making important decisions in this same room. Emily approached him, touching his arm gently. You are like him. You're doing what he would do. I don't know. He would never have gotten into this mess, because he never fell in love with a woman who's worth getting into a mess for. Michael looked at her with such intensity that Emily felt her heart race. Emily! Let's look for the documents, she said quickly, before the charged atmosphere between them took over completely. Where do we start? Michael seemed to make an effort to concentrate on the task. The safe, he said, pointing to a painting on the wall behind the desk. It's hidden there. He removed the painting, revealing an old safe with a combination. Emily watched him. Turn the numbers with precision. You remember the combination? My mother's birth date. He never changed it even after she died. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing piles of documents, some jewelry that must have belonged to Michael's mother, and several folders organized by date. Michael began to remove the documents, spreading them over the desk. Emily positioned herself beside him, trying to understand what they were seeing. These are original contracts of the company, Michael murmured, leafing through the papers. Foundation agreements, meeting minutes. Emily, look at this. He was holding a folder, marked with a date 2 years before his father's death. Inside there was a handwritten letter with the familiar handwriting of Michael Foster Sr. Michael read aloud. To my son Michael, if you're reading this, it means that my suspicions have been confirmed and something has happened to me. For more than a year I've been investigating irregularities in the company's accounts. I discovered that your wife, in partnership with her father, is using our subsidiaries for illegal operations. I tried to confront her directly, but she denied everything and threatened me. She said that if I tried to expose the scheme, she would invent evidence that I was involved too. As you know, son, I would rather die than live without honor. If something happens to me, know that it was not an accident, and know that the only way to save our family's name is to expose the truth, even if it destroys us in the process. Michael finished reading and remained silent, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Michael, she said softly, what exactly did your father mean by, if something happens to me, it was not an accident? My father died of a heart attack, Michael replied, but his voice was strange. He had heart problems for years. The doctors said it was expected. But what if it wasn't natural? Michael looked at her, and Emily saw real fear in his eyes. Emily, if my father was, if someone did something to him, then Jessica is much more dangerous than we imagined. They continued exploring the documents in tense silence. What they found in the following hours painted an even more frightening picture than they had imagined. They weren't just a few phantom accounts or suspicious transfers. It was an elaborate scheme involving dozens of shell companies, high-ranking politicians, international bankers, and even some federal judges. Foster Holdings was just a small piece in a corruption machine that moved billions of dollars annually. And Jessica Collins Foster was at the center of it all, using her position as Michael's wife and the senator's daughter to coordinate operations that went far beyond simple money laundering. This here, Michael said, holding a document, is a contract for supplying equipment to the federal government, overpriced by 300%. And here, he picked up another paper, transfers to accounts abroad that coincide exactly with the dates of government payments. Emily studied the numbers, feeling nausea grow in her stomach. Michael, if this is true, we're talking about a scheme that steals directly from the American people. Money that should go to hospitals, schools, infrastructure. I know. Michael ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. And I was complicit for 10 years without even knowing it. You weren't complicit. You were used. It's the same thing. No, it's not. Emily turned to him, forcing him to look into her eyes. You didn't choose this, but now that you know, you're choosing to do the right thing. Michael held her face between his hands. And if we can't, and if they're too powerful, Then at least we tried, at least we sleep with a clear conscience. Michael kissed her then, a kiss loaded with desperation and gratitude. When they separated, he leaned his forehead against hers. I don't know what I did to deserve someone like you in my life. Maybe you were born for this moment, to do the right thing. They spent the rest of the morning organizing the documents, creating backup copies, assembling a dossier that could be delivered to the authorities. It was a meticulous and frightening job, because with each new document discovered, the magnitude of the scheme became clearer. Around noon, Emily noticed that Michael was becoming increasingly tense. "What is it?" she asked when she saw him, looking out the window for the fourth time in 10 minutes. "I don't know. Strange feeling, like we're being watched." Emily approached the window and looked outside. The property seemed quiet, just the trees swaying in the wind. But there was something in the air, a tension she couldn't identify. "Maybe it's paranoia," she said, but it didn't sound very convincing even to herself. Maybe. Or maybe my father was right about being cautious. Michael went back to the documents, but Emily noticed that he kept looking out the window every few minutes. The feeling that something was wrong grew throughout the afternoon. When the sun began to set, they decided to take a break. Emily prepared a simple dinner with what they found in the well-stocked pantry of the house: pasta with tomato sauce, salad, a bottle of red wine that Michael took from the cellar in the basement. They ate in the dining room, under the soft light of the candles that Michael had lit. It was almost romantic, if not for the pile of incriminating documents on the table next to them, and the constant sensation of danger hovering over them. "Emily," Michael said when they were finishing the meal, "I need to ask you something." "Of course. If we could run away, if there was a way for us to just disappear together without having to face all this, would you run away with me?" Emily thought about the question for a long moment. "To where?" "I don't know, Europe maybe, Canada, somewhere where we could start over, far from all this confusion, and let the scheme continue, let them continue stealing from the country, corrupting the system." Michael sighed. "When you put it that way, it seems impossible. Because it is impossible, for you at least." Emily extended her hand across the table and touched his. "Michael, I fell in love with a man of integrity. If you ran away now, you wouldn't be the same man. And if we fight and lose, and if in the end we can't change anything and still lose everything, then at least we will have tried and we'll have each other." Michael brought her hand to his lips and kissed it softly. "How do you manage to be so strong?" "Because I'm with you, because I finally found something worth fighting for." They stayed in the room until late, drinking wine, talking about everything except the documents on the table next to them. Michael told stories of his childhood in the house, memories of family Christmases, fishing afternoons with his father. Emily talked about her abandoned dreams of having her own company, about the books she wanted to write, about the places she wanted to visit. It was as if they knew this might be the last night of peace they would have for a long time, and they wanted to save every moment. When Emily began to yawn, Michael stood up. "You should go to sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day." Emily stood up too, but when she passed him on her way to the corridor, Michael gently held her arm. "Emily." "Yes?" I don't want you to sleep alone tonight." The words hung in the air between them. Emily felt her heart race. "Michael." "It doesn't have to be anything more than sleeping together. Just, I don't want to be away from you. Not tonight." Emily looked into his eyes and saw vulnerability, fear, and something deeper. Desire, yes, but also need. The need to be close to the person you love when the world seems to be crumbling around you. "Okay," she said softly. They went together to the main bedroom. Michael waited in the corridor while Emily changed, wearing a long cotton nightgown. When she came out of the bathroom, she found Michael already lying in bed, wearing only pajama pants, looking at the ceiling. Emily lay down beside him, maintaining a respectful distance. For a few minutes they remained in silence, each very aware of the other's presence. "Emily," Michael said finally. "Yes?" "Thank you for being here, for not giving up on me." Emily turned on her side to look at him. I'm never going to give up on you. Michael turned too, and now they were face to face, breathing the same air, close enough for her to feel the heat of his body. I love you, he whispered. I love you too. Michael extended his hand and touched her face, his thumb tracing a soft line across her cheek. Emily closed her eyes at the touch, inclining her face against his hand. Emily, Michael said, and there was something different in his voice. Hoarser, more loaded. Yes? May I kiss you? In response, Emily moved closer to him. The kiss began soft, almost hesitant, but quickly deepened. Years of repressed desire exploded between them, and suddenly they were kissing with a hunger that frightened and excited at the same time. Michael pulled her closer, and Emily felt his body hot and solid against hers. Her hands explored his back, feeling the tense muscles under the skin. Michael moaned softly against her lips, and the sound sent waves of heat through Emily's body. Emily, he whispered, moving slightly away. Are you sure? I've been sure for 8 years, she replied. This time it was she who kissed him, pulling him on top of her. Michael responded with equal intensity, one hand tangling in her hair, the other tracing lines of fire along the side of her body. What happened next was an explosion of intimacy that neither of them was prepared to face. Years of repressed sexual tension, of unrequited looks, of accidental touches that weren't so accidental, all culminated that night. They made love with an intensity that was almost desperate, as if they knew the world was about to end, and this was their last chance to be together. It was urgent and tender at the same time, passionate and caring, a mixture of lust and love that left both exhausted and satisfied. Afterwards they lay in each other's arms, breathing heavily, hearts still racing. It was worth waiting for. Emily murmured against his chest. Michael laughed softly, a sound vibrating in his chest. It was worth everything. Every moment of doubt, every sleepless night, every risk we took to get here. Emily raised her head to look at him. Do you regret it? Being with you? Never. Discovering the scheme? No. Having to destroy everything my father built to do the right thing? Not that either. Michael caressed her hair. For the first time in my life, Emily, I feel truly alive, truly myself. Even knowing that tomorrow might be, especially knowing that. They stayed embraced until they fell asleep, bodies intertwined, as if they were two pieces of the same whole that finally came together. But at 3 a.m, Michael woke up to a strange noise. He got up silently, trying not to wake Emily, and went to the window. Outside, under the weak light of the moon, he saw something that made his blood freeze. There were footprints in the damp earth around the house, footprints that weren't there when they arrived. Michael returned to the bed and shook Emily gently. Emily, he whispered. Wake up. What is it? She asked sleepily. We have company. Emily woke up completely at once. What? There are footprints out there. Someone has been prowling around the house. Emily sat up in bed, fully alert now. Are you sure? Absolutely. And, Emily, they're recent footprints, very recent. They dressed quickly in silence. Michael grabbed a flashlight and they went out through the back door, walking cautiously to where he had seen the marks. The footprints were clear in the earth, moistened by dew. Someone had walked around the entire house, stopping at each window as if studying the interior. How many people? Emily whispered. Michael analyzed the marks with the flashlight. At least 2, maybe 3. And now? Michael looked at her, and Emily saw real fear in his eyes for the first time. Now we have to get out of here tonight. And the documents? We take what we can, the rest we'll have to leave. They quickly returned to the house, took the essentials, and the most important documents. Michael knew a trail through the back of the property that led to a secondary road where he had left a second car years ago. When they were going out through the back door, Emily heard the distant sound of engines approaching on the main road. Michael, she said, grabbing his arm. I heard it. Let's go. They ran along the trail in the darkness, Michael guiding the way with the flashlight. Behind them they could see lights turning on in the house they had just abandoned. We made it, Emily gasped when they reached the secondary road. But when Michael tried to start the old car, the engine just sputtered without catching. "Damn," he muttered, trying again. "Michael." I know. On the third attempt, the engine caught. Michael stepped hard on the accelerator, and they left there at high speed without looking back. Only when they were on the main road, miles away from the house, did Emily manage to breathe again. "Who were they?" she asked. "I don't know, but I have a very strong suspicion." Emily looked at him and saw an iron determination on his face. "Michael, what are we going to do now?" "Now," he said, gripping the steering wheel. "We're going to Los Angeles, and we're going to deliver these documents before they have the chance to stop us." "And if it's a trap? And if they're waiting for us?" Michael looked at her quickly. "Then we face it together, as we agreed." Emily nodded, holding his hand. "Together," she repeated. But deep in their hearts, both knew that from that moment on, there would be no going back. The war had officially begun, and they still didn't know if they would come out of it alive. The journey back to Los Angeles was made in tense silence. Michael drove focused, constantly checking the rearview mirrors, while Emily watched the night landscape pass by the window. It was almost 5 in the morning when they reached the outskirts of the city, and the traffic was still relatively empty. Michael had decided to go straight to his apartment in Malibu, where they could reorganize before deciding the next steps. "Are you sure it's safe to go to your home?" Emily asked when they entered the neighborhood. "Safer than any other place." "I know. The building has 24-hour security, and Jessica never liked the apartment, said it was too small for her standard." Michael's apartment was on the 20th floor of a discreet building, with a view of the beach. It was modern but cozy, decorated with good taste without ostentation. Emily had never been there. It was too intimate a territory for the boundaries they maintained in their professional relationship. "It's beautiful," she said, observing the spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows. "It's my refuge," Michael replied, carefully locking the door. "The only place where I can really be myself." Now Emily understood why. There was nothing there that referred to Michael Foster's public life. No photos of social events, no business awards on the walls, just books, some plants, comfortable furniture and paintings by American artists she didn't recognize. Michael went to the kitchen and prepared coffee, while Emily settled on the sofa with the documents they had managed to save from Lake Tahoe. Even having taken only the essentials, it was still enough material to bring down dozens of powerful people. "Michael," she said when he returned with 2 cups, "we need to decide who we're going to deliver this to." "I know. The problem is that we don't know exactly who is involved, and if we deliver it to the wrong person, we could end up dead." Michael sat down beside her, and Emily noticed how exhausted he looked. The last 48 hours had taken a high toll on him. "Is there someone you trust? Someone who definitely wouldn't be involved in this?" Michael thought for a moment. "Maybe. There's a federal prosecutor my father knew. Man of integrity, incorruptible, but I don't know if he's still active or if—" The ring of the intercom interrupted him. Both froze. "Were you expecting someone?" Emily whispered. "Nobody knows I'm here." Michael approached the intercom carefully. "Who is it?" "FBI. We need to speak with Mr. Michael Foster." Emily's blood froze. Michael looked at her and she saw the fear in his eyes. "One moment," Michael responded, then quietly to Emily. "The fire escape. Do you know how to get there?" "Michael, I'm not going to leave." "You alone?" "Emily, they might be here to arrest me. If you're caught with me, then we'll be arrested together." The intercom rang again, more insistently. "Mr. Foster, please. It's important." Michael breathed deeply. "I'm going to answer. You stay here. Hide in the bedroom. If things get out of control, you escape via the fire escape and take the documents." "Michael, promise," he said, holding her face. "Promise that you'll run if necessary." Emily nodded reluctantly. Michael kissed her forehead quickly and went to answer the intercom. "You can come up." Emily took the documents and hid in the bedroom, leaving the door slightly ajar so she could hear what was happening. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure anyone could hear it. A few minutes later, she heard voices in the living room, a male voice that she didn't recognize, talking to Michael. She could only catch fragments of the conversation. Ongoing. Investigation. Voluntary cooperation. Not a suspect for now. Then she heard a voice that made her world stop. Emily? Emily Anderson? It was Ryan Mitchell. Emily closed her eyes, feeling as if the past had just punched her in the stomach. Ryan, her ex-fiancé, the man she had loved before Michael, the man she had lost when... She works with me, she heard Michael respond. Why do you ask? Information indicates that she may be involved in this situation. We need to talk to her too. Emily knew she had no choice. If she ran now, she would look guilty, and if Ryan was really there as a federal prosecutor, maybe it was the chance they needed. She took a deep breath and left the bedroom. Ryan was standing in the living room, wearing a dark suit, thinner. Then she remembered, hair slightly graying at the temples. When he saw her, his expression changed completely. Emily. Ryan. The silence that followed was loaded with history. Michael looked from one to the other, clearly perceiving that there was something between them. You know each other, Michael said. It wasn't a question. We do, Ryan replied without taking his eyes off Emily. We were close a few years ago. Emily felt her face heat up. Close was a very polite way to describe what they had been. Mr. Foster, Ryan said, resuming the professional tone, I need you to come with us to make a statement. There are serious accusations involving your company. What kind of accusations? Money laundering, corruption, cartel formation. Your wife is being investigated, and as president of the company, you are a person of interest. Michael looked at Emily quickly. And Emily, why do you want to talk to her? Because, Ryan said, someone denounced her as an accomplice, alleging that she had access to all the company's information and cannot have remained ignorant of the schemes. Emily felt the ground collapse beneath her feet. Who made that accusation? Ryan hesitated. Jessica Collins Foster. Michael exploded. That's ridiculous. Emily didn't know anything. I myself only discovered it last week. Mr. Foster, please. We know this is difficult, but we need to follow protocol. Emily looked from Michael to Ryan, feeling trapped between two worlds. On one side, the man she loved who was about to be dragged into a scandal that could destroy him. On the other, the man she had loved in the past who now represented the law. Ryan, she said finally, can I talk to you alone? Michael didn't like that at all. Emily, I don't think that's a good idea. Please, she said, looking at him with pleading eyes. Trust me. Michael hesitated but nodded. He and the other police officer went out to the corridor, leaving Emily and Ryan alone. 5 years, Ryan said as soon as they were alone. 5 years without seeing you, and you appear in the middle of the biggest investigation of my career. Ryan, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're involved up to your neck with money laundering and corruption. Emily approached him. You know me. You know I would never do that. I thought I knew you, Ryan replied, but his voice was less cold. Until you disappeared from my life without a decent explanation. Emily felt tears stinging her eyes. She knew this conversation was inevitable, but didn't expect it to happen at that moment in those circumstances. Ryan, I didn't disappear. I tried to explain to you. Explain what? That you were in love with another man? That our engagement was a mistake. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Emily? Because the way I remember it, you ended things with me a week after we lost the baby. The words fell between them like a bomb. Emily closed, her eyes remembering the pain of that period, the miscarriage at 3 months of pregnancy, the depression that followed, the way Ryan tried to console her, but she felt guilty, as if her body had failed them. Ryan, she said softly, I didn't end it because I didn't love you. I ended it because I couldn't be the woman you deserved anymore. And now? Can you be the woman he deserves? Ryan gestured toward the door, referring to Michael. Emily looked into his eyes, seeing pain and jealousy and something that could be love still unresolved. Yes, she said simply, I can. Ryan laughed bitterly. At least you're honest. Always was your best quality. Ryan, listen. Michael isn't involved in the crimes. He discovered the scheme and was trying to expose it. We have documents that prove this. What documents? Emily hesitated. Showing the documents to Ryan would be trusting him completely. But she had known Ryan for years. She knew he was a man of integrity, incorruptible. If there was someone she could trust. Documents that Michael's father hid before he died, evidence that he knew about the scheme and tried to stop it. And more importantly, she breathed deeply, evidence that Jessica may have ordered the murder of her father-in-law to silence him. Ryan's eyes widened. Emily, are you telling me we have a homicide as well? I'm telling you that you need to investigate the death of Michael Foster Sr. Because if he was murdered, Jessica is more dangerous than anyone imagines. Ryan was silent for a long moment, processing the information. Where are these documents? Emily pointed to the table where she had left the folder. There, but Ryan, I need you to promise me something. What? That you'll protect Michael. He's trying to do the right thing. He doesn't deserve to be destroyed because of his wife's crimes. Ryan looked at her with an indecipherable expression. You really are in love with him, aren't you? Sir, and he with you? Yes. Ryan nodded slowly. Then I'm going to make you a proposal, Emily. You cooperate completely with our investigation. You tell everything you know, hand over all the documents, testify against Jessica if necessary. In exchange, we guarantee protection for you and for Michael. And if I don't cooperate, then you go to prison as an accomplice, and Michael probably does too. Emily knew she had no choice, but she also knew that Ryan was offering more than he should. He was risking his own career to protect her. Why are you doing this? She asked. Ryan approached her, and for a moment she saw the man she had loved, not the federal prosecutor. Because despite everything, I still care about you. And because, he hesitated, because maybe you're right about deserving to be happy. Emily felt tears run down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be much harder than you imagine. Ryan called Michael and the other police officer back. During the next hour, they examined the documents, recorded preliminary statements, and established a plan of action. We're going to need you to be in protective custody, Ryan explained. At least until we can arrest the main people involved. For how long? Michael asked. I don't know. It could be weeks. It could be months. Michael looked at Emily, and she saw the concern in his eyes. Protective custody meant they would be separated in safe but isolated locations, unable to communicate. There is another option, Ryan said. We can keep you together, but it would be in a safe house outside the city, completely isolated until the end of the investigation. Emily and Michael looked at each other. It was the only way they could stay together. I accept, Michael said. Me, too, Emily agreed. Very well, I'll make the arrangements. You can take only the essentials. We leave here in 2 hours. When Ryan and the other police officer left to organize the transfer, Emily and Michael were left alone. Emily, Michael said, you had to tell me about you and Ryan. Why? Does it make a difference? Not to me, but it might to him. And at this moment, we need him to be on our side. Emily nodded. Michael was right. We were engaged for 2 years, she said. We were going to get married, but I lost a baby in the 3rd month of pregnancy. I went into deep depression and broke up with him. I thought he deserved someone better. Michael held her hands. I'm sorry. It must have been terrible. It was. But it was 5 years ago. It's in the past. For you, maybe. But by the way he looks at you, it's not in the past for him. Emily sighed. What are you trying to say? That we have to be careful. Ryan might be our salvation or our doom, and we can't be sure which it will be. 2 hours later, they were being escorted to an unmarked van. The safe house was in a small town in the interior of the state, 2 hours from Los Angeles. It was a simple but comfortable house, with federal security guards making constant rounds. During the first days, the routine was strange but almost tranquil. They woke up late, had breakfast together, spent the afternoons organizing more documents and preparing testimonies. Ryan visited regularly to update on the progress of the investigation. Jessica is collaborating, he informed on a Thursday, claiming she was coerced by her father, that she had no choice. That's a lie, Michael said. We know, but she has excellent lawyers. It's going to be difficult to prosecute her. And the investigations into my father's death? Ongoing. We got an order to exhume the body. We'll know in a few weeks if there are signs of poisoning. Emily noticed the tension growing in Michael with each new piece of information. He barely slept, ate little, spent hours looking out the window as if waiting for someone to come get them. One night she woke up and noticed he wasn't in bed. She found him in the kitchen, sitting at the table, staring into space. "Michael, what is it?" He looked at her and Emily saw desperation in his eyes. What if we can't prove anything? What if Jessica goes free and we're left as the guilty ones? Emily sat down beside him. That's not going to happen. We have too much evidence. Evidence can be contested. Witnesses can be bought. Emily, you don't understand the power these people have. So what do you want to do? Give up. Michael held her hands. I want you to accept Ryan's proposal. What proposal? He came to see me yesterday when you were sleeping. He said he can get total immunity for you if you testify against me too. Emily withdrew her hands abruptly. What? Emily, listen. If you say I was behind everything, that you were just a manipulated employee, no. You get out clean from this situation. You can restart your life. I said no, Michael. Why not? Because I won't betray you. Because I love you. Because we're not just partners in this scheme, we're partners in life. Emily, no, Michael, don't ask me this. Don't ask me to save my own skin at your expense. Michael stood up too, trying to hug her, but she moved away. It's precisely because I love you that I'm asking this. If you loved me for real, you would never ask me to betray you. If I loved you for real, I would never have involved you in this mess. Emily stopped and looked at him. There was something in his voice, something she couldn't identify. Michael, you're hiding something from me. He hesitated for too long before answering. No. Yes, you are. What did Ryan tell you yesterday? Michael ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that Emily had learned to recognize as a sign of extreme stress. That Jessica claims to have evidence that I was involved from the beginning, that I have accounts abroad that I don't know about, that my signature is on documents I swear I've never seen. Emily felt her blood run cold. She's forging evidence. Or she always had a contingency plan. Emily, if she can incriminate me, convincingly, we prove your innocence. We have your father's documents. And if it's not enough, and if a jury decides that a corrupt businessman is more credible than a businessman who claims innocence? Emily approached him again. Then we face it together, as we always have. Michael hugged her then, and Emily felt as if he were saying goodbye. I love you, he whispered, more than you can imagine. I love you too. Promise that regardless of what happens, you'll move on, that you'll be happy. Michael, why are you talking like this? Promise? Emily moved away to look at him. Only if you promise the same thing. Michael smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I promise. The next morning, Emily woke up alone. Michael had disappeared during the night. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence that he had been kidnapped. He had simply disappeared, taking only the clothes on his back and leaving a note on the bedside table. Emily, forgive me. This is the only way to protect you. I love you forever. M. Emily held the note with trembling hands, unable to fully process what was happening. Michael had fled. He had abandoned everything, the investigation, the plans, her, and simply disappeared. The federal security guards panicked when they discovered it. Ryan arrived 2 hours later, furious and worried. How the hell did he manage to get out of here without anyone seeing? He shouted at the guards. We don't know, sir. We checked all exits, all cameras. It's as if he simply evaporated. Ryan turned to Emily, who was sitting on the sofa, still holding the note. Emily, did you know he was planning this? No, she said, but her voice came out as a whisper. Are you sure? Because if you helped him escape... I said I didn't. Emily exploded. You think I would be here if I knew? You think I would let him go away alone?" Ryan studied her for a moment, and Emily saw when he realized she was being sincere. "Emily, I'm sorry. Where could he have gone?" "We don't." "No, but we'll find him. And when you find him," Ryan hesitated, "it will depend on the circumstances." Emily understood what he wasn't saying. If Michael had fled, he looked guilty, and guilty people on the run were treated as dangerous criminals. "Ryan," she said, "he didn't flee because he's guilty. He fled because he thought it was the only way to protect me." "What do you mean?" Emily told him about the conversation of the previous night, about Ryan's proposal for her to testify against Michael, about the false evidence that Jessica claimed to have. "My God," Ryan said when she finished. "Emily, I never asked you to testify against him. I never offered immunity in exchange for betrayal." Emily's blood froze. "What?" "Yesterday I came here just to update on the investigation. I talked to both of you together, remember? I never spoke with Michael separately." Emily felt the world spin around her. "Then who was it that offered the deal to him?" Ryan was already picking up the phone. "Someone who pretended to be me." "Emily, Michael didn't flee. He was tricked." "Tricked how?" "Someone convinced him that fleeing was the only way to protect you. Someone who wanted him out of the way." Ryan was speaking rapidly on the phone, organizing search teams, issuing alerts. Emily could barely hear because of the blood pounding in her ears. "Ryan," she said when he hung up, "if Michael was tricked into fleeing, it means that. It means he fell into a trap, and that he might be in much greater danger than we imagined." An hour later, the news arrived. Jessica Collins Foster had suffered a car accident in the Sierra Nevada. The car had gone off the road at a curve and rolled over several times. She was alive but in serious condition. In the glove compartment of the car, the police found a handwritten letter, a farewell letter, signed by Michael Foster, where he confessed to being involved in the scheme from the beginning and asked for forgiveness from his wife before they fled the country together. When Ryan told Emily about the letter, she collapsed. "It's a lie," she cried. "Michael would never write that, never." "I know," Ryan said, hugging her. "But now it looks like he planned everything, the escape, the accident. Emily, if we can't find him soon, they're going to issue an international arrest warrant. He didn't do this, Ryan, you have to believe me." "I believe you, but the evidence." "What evidence? A forged letter? A convenient accident?" Ryan was silent, and Emily saw that he was thinking the same thing she was. "Ryan," she said slowly, "what if the accident wasn't an accident?" "What do you mean?" "What if someone tried to kill Jessica to silence her? What if the letter was planted to incriminate Michael?" "Then," Ryan said grimly, "we're dealing with someone much more dangerous than we imagined. Someone who is willing to kill to protect the scheme." Emily looked out the window of the safe house, seeing the peaceful afternoon outside, and felt real fear for the first time since everything began. Michael was somewhere out there, alone, probably not knowing he was being hunted as a criminal. And worse, not knowing that whoever had tricked him might be planning something much worse for him. "We have to find him," she said. "We will," Ryan promised. "But Emily..." "What?" "If when we find him he's..." "Don't say it," Emily interrupted him. "Don't say it. He's alive and we're going to bring him back." But deep in her heart, Emily was beginning to wonder if Michael had disappeared of his own will, or if someone had made sure he could never tell his version of the story. And for the first time since she fell in love with Michael Foster, Emily wondered if she really knew him as well as she thought. The doubt was like poison, spreading slowly through her mind. What if Michael really was guilty? What if everything they lived together was an elaborate lie? Emily shook her head, trying to push away the thoughts. No, she knew Michael. She knew the man behind the businessman. She knew his integrity, his kindness, his love for her. She couldn't start doubting now, not when he most needed her to believe in him. But as the days passed without news, the doubt grew like a shadow in her heart, and Emily wondered if love was strong enough to survive uncertainty. 3 weeks had passed since Michael's disappearance, and Emily felt as if she were living in an endless nightmare. The safe house in the interior had transformed into a golden prison where each day dragged more slowly than the previous one. Ryan visited almost daily, bringing updates that were never good enough, and looking at her with a mixture of professional concern and something more personal that she preferred not to identify. That September morning, Emily was sitting on the back porch of the house, observing the distant mountains while having her third coffee of the day. She had been sleeping poorly for weeks, always waking up hoping to find Michael beside her in bed, only to encounter the cold emptiness of the sheets. The dark circles under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights, of a heart that refused to accept that the man she loved might have simply disappeared. The sound of Ryan's car arriving made her sigh. He had been different lately, more tense, more careful with his words. Emily knew the investigation wasn't going well, even though he tried to maintain an optimistic facade. "Good morning," Ryan said, climbing the steps of the porch. He was wearing a light grey suit, appropriate for the heat that was beginning to intensify even at that altitude. "How are you feeling?" "How do you think?" Emily replied without looking at him. Ryan sat in the chair beside her, and Emily could feel the weight of his gaze. "Emily, we need to talk." Something in the tone of his voice made Emily turn her head. Ryan seemed more serious than usual, and there was a tension in his shoulders that she had learned to recognize as bad news. What happened now? Jessica woke up. Emily felt her heart race. Jessica had been in a coma for 3 weeks since the accident. If she had woken up, she could finally tell her version of the facts. And she's claiming total amnesia, says she doesn't remember anything from the last 2 years, not the scheme, not the marriage to Michael, not even who she is. Emily closed, her eyes frustrated. How convenient. "Emily, there's more. The doctors confirmed that the amnesia is real. The head trauma was severe enough to cause significant memory loss. Or she's pretending very well. Or someone made sure she couldn't talk." Ryan's words made Emily open her eyes. "What do you mean?" "The accident, Emily, the more we investigate, the less it seems accidental. The braking marks show that she tried to stop, but the brakes failed. And the mechanic who examined the car found signs of sabotage." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Someone tried to kill her. And almost succeeded. If it weren't for the seat belt and the luck of the car rolling over in an area with grass, she would be dead. Emily remained silent, processing the information. If someone had tried to kill Jessica, it meant that her own life was in danger, but it also meant that Michael wasn't involved in the accident. He was being framed. "Ryan," she said slowly, "do you still think Michael is guilty?" Ryan sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Honestly, no, but the evidence against him is accumulating. We found suspicious bank movements in accounts linked to his name, documents with his signature, authorizing million-dollar transfers, and now what? Now there's evidence that he may have hired someone to sabotage Jessica's car." Emily stood up abruptly, knocking over the coffee cup in the process. "That's ridiculous. Michael would never do that." "Emily, please, sit down." "I'm not going." "To sit down? This is a setup, Ryan, and you know it." Ryan stood up too, trying to approach her, but Emily backed away. "Emily, listen, I want to believe in his innocence as much as you do. But nothing. You're letting your investigations be manipulated." "By whom?" "By whoever is really behind all this." Ryan observed her for a moment, and Emily saw something changing in his expression. "Emily," he said slowly, "how long have you known Michael? Really known him?" 8 years. "And in those 8 years, how many times did he travel abroad?" Emily hesitated. It was a strange question. "Several. Why?" "Where to?" "Switzerland, sometimes the United States. Normal business trips." "And did you always go with him?" "Not always. Sometimes they were quick trips or meetings where my presence wasn't necessary." Ryan took a tablet from the briefcase he was carrying and showed it to Emily. On the screen there were surveillance photos from airports. These photos were taken over the last 5 years. All show Michael entering or leaving airports in countries known as tax havens. Emily looked at the photos, feeling her blood run cold. Michael was clearly visible in all of them, always alone, always with a serious expression. "This doesn't prove anything," she said, but her voice no longer sounded so convincing. "Emily, look at the dates." Emily looked. All the trips coincided, with periods when Michael had said he was in San Francisco or Washington, D.C. on business, periods when she had stayed in Los Angeles, taking care of the company. "He lied to you," Ryan said softly. "For years." Emily sat heavily in the chair, feeling as if the world were crumbling around her once again. "This still doesn't prove he was involved in the scheme," she said, but her voice was just a whisper. "No," Ryan agreed, "but it proves he was hiding things from you. Important things." Emily remained silent for a long moment, looking at the distant mountains. Everything she thought she knew about Michael was being questioned, piece by piece. "Ryan," she said finally, "do you think I was an idiot?" "No," he replied immediately. "I think you were a woman in love, and women in love sometimes see what they want to see." "Like you?" Ryan smiled sadly. "Like me. For a long time, I saw in you someone who didn't exist. I saw the perfect woman for me, ignoring all the signs that you didn't love me the same way." Emily looked at him, seeing for the first time in years not the hurt ex-fiancé, but the man who had tried to love her in the best way he knew how. "Ryan, I loved you, really." "I know, but not like you loved him." The words hung in the air between them. Emily knew that Ryan was right. What she felt for Michael was different from anything she had experienced before. It was more intense, more consuming, more dangerous. "And now," she asked, "what happens now?" "Now we continue looking for him, and when we find him, you'll have to decide if you still want to be by his side, knowing everything you know. And if he's innocent, then we'll prove it, and if he's not—" Ryan looked into her eyes. "Then you'll have to choose between love and truth." That afternoon, after Ryan left, Emily was alone with her thoughts. She walked around the house, fidgeted with the documents she already knew by heart, tried to read a book she had borrowed from the security guards. Nothing worked to distract her from the confusion in her mind. She was in the kitchen preparing tea when she heard one of the security guards talking on the phone. She didn't intend to eavesdrop, but the conversation was about Michael, and she couldn't help paying attention. "Yes, sir? No sign of him yet? I understand. Yes, the witness is safe." Witness, that's how they referred to her now. No longer as a victim, no longer as a person of interest. Witness. Someone who had witnessed crimes and could now testify against the culprit. Against Michael. Emily leaned on the kitchen counter, feeling nausea. It was all coming down to this, wasn't it? Eventually, she would have to take the witness stand and tell everything she knew about Michael Foster. She would have to detail his movements, his trips, his lies. She would have to help destroy the man she loved. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't hear the soft knock on the back door. The security guards didn't seem to notice either. They were in front of the house making their usual rounds. Emily approached the door cautiously. On the other side of the glass, she could see a hooded figure, clearly trying not to be seen. "Who is it?" she whispered. "Emily, it's me." The voice made her heart stop. It was Michael. Emily quickly unlocked the door, pulling him inside before anyone could see him. "My God," she whispered, looking at him. Michael was thin, unshaven, clothes wrinkled as if he had slept in them for days. But his eyes were alive, alert, and full of such intense relief at seeing her that Emily felt tears well up. "Emily," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Thank God you're okay." For a moment, Emily allowed herself to melt into his embrace, to smell the familiar scent, to feel the solidity of his body against hers. For a moment, all doubts disappeared. Then she remembered the photos Ryan had shown her. "Michael," she said, moving away from him, "what are you doing here? How did you find me?" "I know the government properties that are used for witness protection." It wasn't hard to figure out. "You should be running. There's an international arrest warrant out for you." Michael laughed bitterly. "I know. For crimes I didn't commit." "Then why did you run?" Michael looked at her intensely. "Because I believed. A lie. Someone convinced me that running was the only way to protect you." "Who?" Someone who pretended to be Ryan. Someone who knew exactly what to say to make me believe that you would be in danger if I stayed. Who? Someone who passed himself off as Ryan. Someone who knew exactly what to say to make me believe you would be in danger if I stayed. Emily studied his face, looking for signs of lying. She found none, but she also knew that Michael was good at controlling his expressions. "Michael," she said slowly, "I need you to tell me the truth. About the trips, about the accounts abroad, about everything." Michael's expression changed. "What? Trips? To Switzerland, to tax havens. Ryan showed me surveillance photos." Michael ran his hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that she knew so well. "Emily, I can explain that." "Then explain." Michael looked around the kitchen, as if checking if anyone was listening. 2 years ago, I began to suspect that something was wrong in the company. I didn't know what, but there were inconsistencies in the numbers, movements that didn't make sense. And I began to investigate on my own. The trips to Switzerland were to meet with bankers who could help me track the money. The trips to other countries were to follow leads about phantom accounts. Emily observed him attentively. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't know who I could trust. Emily, the scheme was much bigger than we imagined. There were people within the FBI itself involved." "That's impossible." "It's true, and the proof of that is that someone managed to pass themselves off as Ryan to trick me. Someone who had access to confidential information about the investigation." Emily felt a shiver. If Michael was telling the truth, it meant that not even Ryan could be completely trusted. "Michael," she said, "Jessica woke up. How is she?" "Claiming total amnesia, but the doctors confirmed that someone sabotaged her car." Michael closed his eyes. "So they tried to kill her. And you're being framed for that too." Michael opened his eyes, and Emily saw real fear. Emily, they're going to kill me. They won't even try to arrest me. They'll claim I resisted arrest and execute me." "Don't say that." "It's true. I'm the only one who can connect all the dots of the conspiracy. With Jessica amnesiac and me dead, there's no one left to tell the truth." Emily knew that Michael was right. If he was being framed in such an elaborate way, it was because someone very powerful wanted him to disappear permanently. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "You're going to stay here," Michael said. "You're going to continue cooperating with the investigation. You're going to testify when necessary. You're going to keep yourself safe. And you?" "I'm going to continue investigating. I'm going to find who's really behind all this. Alone. It's the only way." Emily shook her head. "No, I'm not going to let you do this alone." "Emily..." "No, Michael. I already let you go once. I'm not going to let you go again." Michael approached her, holding her face between his hands. "Emily, if you come with me, you'll become a fugitive too. You'll lose everything." "I already lost everything when you disappeared." Michael kissed her then, a desperate kiss, loaded with fear and love and uncertainty. When they separated, he leaned his forehead against hers. "Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "What? Do you still trust me, even after everything you've discovered?" Emily looked into his eyes, searching for answers. She saw the man she had known for 8 years, the man who cared about every employee of the company, who treated waiters with the same courtesy he treated directors. She saw the man who had risked everything to expose corruption, even knowing it could destroy him. But she also saw a stranger, a man who had lied about trips, who had hidden investigations, who had fled when things got difficult. "I want to trust," she said honestly. "But I'm confused, Michael. There are things you hid from me, for your protection, or for your convenience." Michael recoiled as if he had been slapped. "Emily, do you really think I'm capable of all these crimes? I don't know what to think anymore." The words came out of her as a whisper, but they hit Michael like a shout. She saw something breaking in his eyes. "So that's it," he said. "You doubt me too." "Michael." "No, Emily. It's okay. I understand." Michael headed for the door, but Emily held him by the arm. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to finish this alone." "Michael, don't go, please." He turned to look at her one last time. Emily, when all this is over, when the truth comes out, I hope you remember this moment. I hope you remember that, when I most needed you to believe in me, you doubted. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Emily. But love should be. Michael went out the back door, disappearing into the darkness before Emily could stop him. She stood in the kitchen, listening to the distant sound of the security guards talking in front of the house, completely unaware of the fact that the most wanted man in the country had just slipped through their fingers. Emily sat on the kitchen floor and cried. She cried for the confusion in her heart, for the impossibility of knowing who to trust, for the way love had become so complicated and painful. She cried because she knew that Michael was right. When he most needed her to believe in him, she doubted. But she also cried because she didn't know if her doubt was unjustified or if it was her instinct trying to protect her from a painful truth. The next morning, Ryan arrived earlier than usual. Emily was still in the kitchen having coffee and trying to decide if she should tell him about Michael's visit. "We have news," Ryan said, sitting at the table with her. "What kind of news?" "About Michael's father's death. The exhumation results are in." Emily felt her heart race. "And?" "Arsenic. Small doses administered over several weeks. Enough to simulate a natural heart attack." Emily closed her eyes. Michael Foster Sr. had, indeed, been murdered. "This proves that Michael was right about everything," she said. "It proves that someone killed his father. It doesn't necessarily prove that Michael is innocent." Emily looked at Ryan with disbelief. "How can you say that?" "Emily, think with me. If Michael discovered that his father was investigating the scheme, and if he was involved in the scheme from the beginning, are you suggesting that Michael killed his own father? I'm suggesting that we can't rule out the possibility." Emily stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous, Ryan. Michael loved his father. Complicated loves can lead to complicated choices." Emily looked at Ryan and suddenly saw something she hadn't noticed before. There was a determination in his eyes, a coldness that wasn't there in the first days of the investigation. "Ryan," she said slowly, "why do I have the impression that you want Michael to be guilty?" Ryan hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "I want the truth, Emily, whatever it may be." But Emily had noticed the hesitation, and suddenly she began to wonder about Ryan's true motives. "Ryan," she said, "do you love me?" The question caught him by surprise. "What? Does that have to do with the investigation?" "It has everything to do with it. Answer." Ryan was silent for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally, "I never stopped loving you. And if I choose Michael, even if he's guilty, then I'll have to accept your choice. And if I choose Michael, and he's innocent?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. "Ryan, then I'll have to live with the fact that I tried to destroy an innocent man out of jealousy." The honesty of the response shocked Emily, but it also clarified something important for her. "Ryan, you need to step away from this investigation." "I can't." "You need to. Your judgment is compromised." "Emily." "No, Ryan. You just admitted that you might be driven by jealousy. How can I trust your evidence?" Ryan stood up too, and Emily saw anger in his eyes. "Fine, Emily. I'll step away. But when you discover who Michael really is, when all the truth comes out, remember that I tried to protect you." "Protect me from what?" "From discovering that you fell in love with a murderer." Ryan left the house without saying goodbye, leaving Emily alone with her doubts and fears. That afternoon, she made a decision. She asked to speak with Ryan's boss, explained the personal situation between them, and requested that another investigator take over the case. It was a difficult conversation, but necessary. The new investigator was a woman named Carly Rodriguez, an experienced prosecutor who had no personal connection to any of those involved. When she arrived the next day, Emily immediately felt more comfortable. "Emily," Carly said after reviewing all the files, "I want you to know that I'm going to investigate this case with complete impartiality. I don't care if Michael Foster is guilty or innocent. I only care about the truth." "Thank you," Emily said, feeling relieved for the first time in weeks. Now I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. And Emily, if you're hiding something to protect Michael, I need you to rethink that. The only way to truly protect him is to ensure that the truth comes out. Emily took a deep breath and began to tell. Everything. The relationship with Michael, his suspicions about the scheme, the escape to Lake Tahoe, the night they made love, his disappearance, and the visit from the night before. Carly listened to everything without interrupting. When Emily finished, they remained silent for a few minutes. Emily, Carly said finally, do you believe that Michael is innocent? I want to believe, but I admit I'm confused. And if I told you that there's evidence that Ryan didn't share with you, evidence that might completely change your perspective on this case? Emily felt her heart race. What evidence? Carly opened her briefcase and took out a document. This is a bank report that arrived this morning, about the accounts abroad that supposedly belong to Michael. Emily took the document, but couldn't understand the numbers and codes. What does it mean? It means that the accounts were opened using falsified documents. Michael's signature was forged. And more importantly, Carly paused, the accounts were opened by someone within the FBI. Emily felt as if the world had stopped spinning. Ryan? We don't know yet, but someone with access to the FBI's internal system, someone who could manipulate evidence, falsify documents, direct the investigation. Emily leaned back in the chair, trying to process the information. So Michael might really be innocent. He might be. Or he might have a very well-positioned accomplice. Emily looked at Carly. What do we do now? Now, Carly said, we're going to find Michael. And when we find him, we're finally going to discover the whole truth. And if he doesn't want to be found, then we'll have to convince him that it's his only chance to survive this. That night, Emily stayed awake, thinking about everything that had happened. Michael had been there, in the same kitchen, where she was now having tea just 24 hours before. He had looked into her eyes and asked for trust, and she had failed him. But had she failed? Or had her caution been justified? Emily didn't know anymore, but she knew one thing. She needed to find Michael before it was too late, before whoever was really behind the conspiracy decided he knew too much and silenced him permanently. Because regardless of whether Michael was guilty or innocent, regardless of whether she could trust him or not, she still loved him. And love, Emily was discovering, sometimes meant fighting for someone even when you weren't sure they deserved that fight. Especially then. 2 weeks after Michael's visit to the safe house, Emily was beginning to lose hope. Carly Rodriguez had proven to be a competent and impartial investigator, but even with her help, they couldn't find clues about his whereabouts. It was as if Michael had simply evaporated, leaving only the pain of the farewell and the words that echoed in Emily's mind. When I most needed you to believe in me, you doubted. Guilt was consuming Emily from within. On sleepless nights, she constantly replayed that last encounter, wondering what would have happened if she had simply hugged Michael and said she trusted him unconditionally. Maybe he would have stayed. Maybe they would be facing everything together now, instead of her being alone in that safe house, counting the days and waiting for news that never came. That October morning, autumn was beginning to paint the leaves of the trees around the house with golden tones. Emily was in the living room, trying to concentrate on a book that Carly had brought, when she heard cars arriving outside. From the sounds, there were at least 2 vehicles, arriving at high speed. Her first thought was that something had happened. To Michael, her second thought was pure panic. Carly entered through the main door, accompanied by 3 agents that Emily didn't know. The expression on her face was tense, urgent. "Emily," Carly said quickly, "we need to get out of here now." What happened? We discovered who's behind the conspiracy, and we discovered that this house is no longer safe. Emily stood up, feeling adrenaline surge through her veins. Who is it? I'll explain on the way. Take only the essentials. We have 2 minutes before we leave. Emily ran to the bedroom, throwing some clothes into a small suitcase. Her mind was buzzing with questions, but she knew it wasn't the time to interrogate. When she returned to the living room, Carly was speaking rapidly on the phone. Yes, confirmed. The operation was compromised from the beginning. I understand. No, we still haven't been able to locate Foster. Carly hung up when she saw Emily. Let's go. They quickly left the house and entered two dark cars that were waiting with the engines running. Emily went in Carly's car, which took off at high speed as soon as the doors closed. Carly, Emily said as soon as they left the property, what's happening? Carly checked the rearview mirrors before answering. The investigation revealed something that changed everything. The money laundering scheme wasn't commanded by Jessica or Senator Collins. What do you mean? They were just pawns. Small. Operators in a much larger machine. Emily felt a shiver. So who was in command? Carly hesitated, and Emily saw that the answer wouldn't be easy to hear. Emily, do you know Marcus Thompson? The financial director of Foster Holdings. Of course, he's worked there for 15 years. He's the real mastermind of the operation. Marcus set up the entire laundering structure, using the company as a front. Jessica and her father were just convenient intermediaries. Emily tried to process the information. Marcus Thompson was a discreet, competent man who had always treated Emily with respect and cordiality. It was impossible to imagine that. But how? Why did Michael never suspect? Because Marcus was smart. He cultivated an image of a loyal and efficient employee for years. He gained the trust of Michael's father, then of Michael himself. And when Michael began to suspect that something was wrong, Marcus manipulated the situation so that the suspicions fell on Jessica, Emily completed, finally understanding. Exactly. And when Michael's father got too close to the truth, Marcus poisoned him. Carly nodded somberly. We have evidence that Marcus had access to Michael's father's house. He was considered almost family. It would have been easy for him to administer. Small doses of arsenic over weeks. Emily felt nausea. And now where is Marcus? He fled. We discovered the scheme yesterday, but when we arrived to arrest him, he had already disappeared. He took at least $50 million in accounts abroad. And Michael? Do you think he knows about Marcus? Carly looked at Emily through the rearview mirror. Emily, there's something else you need to know. The tone of her voice made Emily prepare for the worst. What? We found evidence that Marcus was planning to eliminate Michael too. There are records of bank transfers to a professional assassin, dated a week before Michael disappeared. Emily felt her blood freeze. You think Michael is dead? We don't know. But we know he's in extreme danger. Marcus can't allow Michael to tell what he knows. Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of guilt crush her heart. While she was questioning Michael's innocence, doubting him, the man she loved was running for his life from an assassin. Carly, she said, opening her eyes with new determination, we need to find him. We're trying, but Emily, Michael is smart. If he managed to hide from us for so long, he also managed to hide from Marcus. I hope so. They drove for another hour until they reached a new safe house, this one in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. It was larger than the previous one, clearly. Prepared for larger-scale operations. Emily was installed in a room on the second floor with a view of an internal courtyard surrounded by high walls. I'm going to stay here too, Carly said when she was showing the facilities. Along with a team of 6 agents, we're not going to take any more risks. And now what do? Now we wait, and we try to lure Marcus out of hiding. How? Carly looked at Emily with an expression she couldn't decipher. Using you as bait. Words made Emily take a step back. What? Emily, Marcus knows that you're the only person who can link Michael to this whole situation. If Michael dies, you can still testify about what you discovered together. Marcus can't allow that. So, you want to use me to attract him? We want to give him the opportunity to try to reach you, in a controlled environment where we're prepared. Emily remained silent, thinking about the proposal. It was risky, but if it worked, they could arrest Marcus and clear Michael's name. And if Michael tries to find me again? He might end up putting himself in danger. It's a risk we'll have to take. Emily nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. In the days that followed, the operation was carefully planned. Information about Emily's location was leaked through channels that Marcus might be monitoring. Surveillance equipment was installed throughout the property. Elite snipers were positioned at strategic points. And Emily waited, trying to appear as an unprotected witness, while she was, in fact, at the center of one of the largest FBI operations of recent years. It was on the third night of the operation that everything happened. Emily was in her room trying to read when the light suddenly went out. It wasn't just in the room. The entire house plunged into darkness. Seconds later, she heard the sound of gunshots from outside. Emily instinctively ducked down, her heart racing. Through the communicator that Carly had given her, she heard tense voices. Perimeter violated in the north sector. Snipers on the roof of the neighboring house. Carly, where is the witness? Emily pressed the button on the communicator. I'm in the room on the floor. What's happening? Carly's voice came loaded with tension. Marcus is here. With a team. Stay where you are. Don't move. More shots, this time closer. Emily crawled to the window and cautiously looked outside. She could see shadows moving in the dark, flashlight beams cutting through the night. It was like a war zone. Then, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside her room, footsteps that stopped in front of her door. Emily held her breath, pressing herself against the wall beside the bed. There was a pistol under the pillow. Carly had insisted, but her hands were trembling so much that she didn't know if she could use it. The door opened slowly. A hooded figure entered the room, moving carefully, clearly looking for her. Emily waited until the figure had its back to her, then moved silently toward the door. She almost managed to leave the room when she stepped on a floorboard that creaked. The figure turned immediately. Emily Anderson, a male voice said. Even in the dark, Emily recognized Marcus Thompson's voice. Finally. Marcus, she said, trying to keep her voice firm. You don't have to do this. Oh, but I do. Marcus turned on a flashlight, partially illuminating the room. Emily could see that he was wearing dark clothes and had a gun in his hand. You know too much, Emily. Both of you know too much. Both of us? You and Michael. Yes, I know he was here. I know you met. Marcus laughed bitterly. Did you think I wasn't watching? Emily felt real fear for the first time. Where is Michael? Michael is exactly where he should be, out of the way. The words made Emily's heart stop. You killed him. Not yet, but I will, right after I finish with you. Marcus raised the gun, pointing it at Emily. It was at that moment that the door exploded. Michael burst into the room like a storm, throwing himself at Marcus before he could shoot. The two men rolled on the floor, fighting for the gun. Emily pressed herself against the wall, watching in horror as the two men she had known for years fought for their lives. Michael was younger and stronger, but Marcus fought with the desperation of a man who had nothing to lose. The fight lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity to Emily. Then there was a shot. Emily screamed. For a terrible moment, neither man moved. Then Michael slowly got up, breathing heavily, blood flowing from a cut on his forehead. Marcus was on the floor, motionless. Emily, Michael said, turning to her, are you okay? Emily threw herself into his arms, trembling uncontrollably. I thought you were dead, she sobbed against his chest. I thought he had killed you. Shh, Michael whispered, caressing her hair. I'm here. I'm alive. Carly and her team arrived. Seconds later, finding them embracing in the middle of the devastated room. Michael Foster, Carly said, you're under arrest. Michael moved away from Emily, raising his hands. I know, he said calmly, but first I need you to hear what I have to say. You can speak, Carly said, keeping her gun lowered but ready. Marcus Thompson was the real brain behind the money. Laundering operation. I have proof of this hidden in a safe in Zurich. Documents that show how he manipulated my father, how he manipulated me, how he used the company for his own ends. Why didn't you hand over this evidence before? Michael looked at Emily. Because I didn't know who to trust. But now I know that Marcus is dead, and I know that you've discovered the truth. Carly lowered the gun completely. "Michael, you'll have to come with us. You'll have to answer for fleeing protective custody. But if your evidence is true..." "It is true, and it proves not only my innocence but the full extent of the conspiracy." In the weeks that followed, the story unfolded exactly as Michael had promised. The evidence in the Swiss safe was recovered, revealing years of meticulous planning by Marcus. Documents showed how he had cultivated relationships with corrupt politicians, how he had blackmailed Jessica into participating in the scheme, how he had murdered Michael's father when he got too close to the truth. The investigation revealed that Marcus had stolen more than $200 million over a decade, using Foster Holdings as a front for one of the largest money laundering operations in the country's history. Michael was completely exonerated. Jessica, still dealing with amnesia, was considered more of a victim than an accomplice. Her marriage to Michael was annulled due to the fraudulent circumstances that had surrounded it from the beginning. Ryan was discreetly transferred to another division after an internal investigation concluded that his personal feelings had compromised his professional objectivity. And Emily was standing on the balcony of Michael's apartment in Malibu, looking at the golden ocean under the late afternoon sun. 3 months had passed since Marcus's death. 3 months of testimonies, interrogations, legal paperwork, and slowly rebuilding their lives. Foster Holdings had survived the scandal, mainly due to the transparency with which Michael dealt with the whole situation after his exoneration. The company now operated under new transparency policies, with independent auditors monitoring all financial operations. Michael was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. It was strange and wonderful to see him doing everyday things after everything they had gone through. Cooking, washing dishes, reading the newspaper on Sunday mornings. Normal things that normal people did. "Emily," he called, "dinner's ready." She turned and entered the dining room, where Michael had prepared a complete romantic table with candles and flowers. "What is all this?" she asked, smiling. "A celebration," Michael said, pulling out a chair for her. 3 months of freedom. 3 months of truth, 3 months of us. They sat and ate in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. There was so much to process, so much to understand about everything they had lived through. "Emily," Michael said when they were finishing dessert. "Yes? I need to ask for your forgiveness." Emily looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "For lying to you about the trips, for hiding the investigation, for running away when you most needed stability." Emily extended her hand across the table and touched his. "Michael, you were trying to protect me." "I was trying to protect myself, too. And you were right to doubt me." "No, I wasn't. I should have trusted you." Michael shook his head. "Emily, when I was running, when I thought I was going to die, the only thing that kept me alive was the hope of seeing you again. But I also realized something." "What?" "That you were right to question. That true love doesn't demand blind trust, it demands total honesty." Michael stood up and went to the sideboard, taking a small velvet box. Emily felt her heart race. "Michael." He returned to her and knelt beside the chair. "Emily Anderson," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but dazzling diamond ring. "I want to spend the rest of my life being completely honest with you. I want to share every secret, every fear, every dream. I want to wake up by your side every day, knowing that between us there is only truth." Tears began to run down Emily's face. "Will you marry me?" Michael asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Michael placed the ring on her finger, and then kissed her as if it were both the first time and the last time simultaneously. When they separated, Emily leaned her forehead against his. "Michael," she said, "I love you. I love the man of integrity that you are. I love your courage. I love how you fight for what's right even when it's difficult." "And I love you," Michael replied. "I love your strength, your independence. I love how you challenge me to be better." They stayed embraced in the dining room by candlelight, while Los Angeles sparkled outside the window. "You know something?" Emily said after a while. "What?" "My mother was wrong." "About what?" "She thought that loving a complicated man only brought suffering. But she was wrong. Loving a complicated man can bring suffering, yes, but it can also bring a happiness that people who love simple men never experience. Michael laughed. Are you calling me complicated? I'm calling you extraordinary. 6 months later, they got married in a small ceremony at the Lake Tahoe house that had been restored and become the couple's private refuge. Emily wore a simple white silk dress, and Michael was more handsome than ever in a navy blue suit. Ryan attended the ceremony, having finally made peace with the past. In a sincere conversation with Emily a few weeks before, he had admitted that she had always been stronger and more independent than he had been able to see when they were together. You and Michael are perfect for each other, he said during the reception. You challenge each other, you complete each other. It's the kind of love that lasts forever. Carly Rodriguez was Emily's maid of honor, having become a close friend during the entire legal process. And when Emily and Michael exchanged vows on the porch of the house where they had spent their first night together, where they had discovered so much about themselves and about each other, both knew that they were promising not just to love each other, but to be honest with each other forever. I promise to love you in truth and in lies, in wealth and in poverty, in freedom and in prison, Michael said, improvising beyond the traditional vows. I promise never to hide anything from you again, never to try to protect you with lies. I promise to trust you even when it's difficult, Emily replied. I promise to question when necessary, but always from love, never from doubt. I promise to be by your side no matter what storms we face. When the judge declared them husband and wife, and Michael kissed Emily under the blue sky of the mountains, both knew that they had survived the worst that life could throw at them. And they had emerged not just intact, but stronger, more united, more in love than ever. That night, on their honeymoon in the same house where everything had begun to crumble and rebuild, Emily was lying in Michael's arms, listening to the sound of his breathing as he slept. She thought of her mother, of Rose Anderson, who had died believing that loving a complicated man was a curse. But Emily now knew that her mother was wrong. Loving a complicated man wasn't a curse. It was an adventure, and Emily could hardly wait to see what adventures still awaited them. Outside, the wind gently swayed the trees, and the full moon illuminated the mountains that had witnessed so much fear, so much pain, so much love. And now they witnessed the beginning of a new story, a story of truth, courage, and love, a story that would last forever.